All right, good evening, everybody. We need to talk. On the forums, as you could see, there's a huge discussion going on about whether or not the new STFs on advanced difficulty will already be too difficult for the average player to complete. It is so far rumored that you need about 15k DPS to actually complete the missions. That is the reason basically why I mean, we always wanted to do a guide, but it seems that now is probably the best time to really get going on this, as there is such a vast majority of players that actually would need it. First of all, this is supposed to be a PvE guide for the help of those that usually do around 3 to 10k DPS. I will try to go into more detail on most stuff. Therefore, even if you are beyond 10k, I hope this will still help you. But as I said, I will try to limit myself here to the PvE point of view, so we don't run into any trouble. Okay, so that much for a disclaimer. Let's start out with the most basic stuff that we really need to talk about, because it seems that we are not all on the same page when we start out with this game. There are just so many people that have this as their first game, while others obviously played other MMOs before. So we have to really start at the lowest level so we actually catch everyone, okay? What I first want to emphasize upon is your general HUD, like what we see right now. Like if you look at your screen, what do you actually see? How much do you need to see? And how much information is just confusing you? Like we are currently on my fleet patrol escort, which we use for the no-win scenario 2-man the other day. If you didn't see that video, go watch it, it is fucking awesome. So we have this rearrange HUD here in the main menu if you escape your way through it. And basically what I see people having is, let's actually just not close that, but just show everything for once. I think this should do it. Okay, so this is what the average HUD looks like. We don't have the option to really do much about it, but the problem is, why do people have this part on their screen? It blocks, obviously, field of view. Like if you're looking at this, you can only see so much. Like there's a natural limitation to what you can see, okay? Therefore, if you have this and have it down here once more, it is identical. Like you do not benefit in any way from seeing it twice. You have those images and it's all randomly made to be there, but there's no real coordination to things. Like there's no reason why it has to be like this, okay? As well as your experience bar. I hope you are level 50. If you're not, leveling to 60 or something, then it might be useful, but right now it's just blocking your field of view. Same with this fancy thing, you don't really need it, okay? So just make sure to get everything that is not doing anything, get it out of the way. Just make sure that you do see what you need to see. Get your target info somewhere where you can see it, get your target's target info where you can see it, even your focus. Okay, so that way we can always keep track on which buffs he has. I move this a little more to the center. We see ourselves down here. Okay. We don't need our bridge officers. Like we know who they are, we know their names, and put their abilities on your tray, which really brings me to the second point I want to talk to you about. Now there are many ways to fly a ship. Okay, you can use your WASD keys to move your ship, at which point you have your mouse, left mouse button only, for example, to move your camera around. Okay, That way you can keep track on what's going on behind you or in front of you. That is kind of good because your ship can only go so fast, and you are basically free to focus yourself on something else. You just need to have an eye on like where your ship is pointing. Okay, if you want to shoot the other guy over there, you need to actually point your ship in this direction if you're on cannons, for example. So that's it for flying it with keybinds like WASD, E and Q to increase speed. That can be done. If you exceed a certain speed, like fly the Jemadar attack ship with emergency powder engines and aux to dams, that can become inconvenient. At some point, your ship may be too fast. So you can also hold both mouse buttons. Your ship will fly into the direction your camera is currently pointing. Okay. That also can be done. It's quite good if you need to point somewhere exactly. Only problem is in this game, for some reason, when you start to move backwards, it actually turns it around. Like, I'm just keeping my mouse buttons pressed and for some reason turns the ship. Okay. Now, there are two things to mention at this point. People in this game usually click their abilities, like they move their mouse down here and do this, this, and that. Okay? You can do this, but that means that you have to fly your ship with the WASD keys. It's okay to do it with cruisers, as they are kind of slow. If you're flying a really fast ship like the Jemadar attack ship, as I said earlier, that might become inconvenient where you just want to have both mouse buttons pressed. At that point, it is also important to point out that when you look at your screen, as we said earlier, we want everything we don't need out of the field of view. If you have to click your ability down here, you actually have to look down to see where your mouse is pointing, if the cooldowns are over and all that, okay? Basically what you should do is look up here, see what's coming, have a short look down here, look back up, see, oh yeah, we can use this ability, we can use that ability, and press it on the keyboard. Like, I understand that getting this done when you're starting out is really, really difficult, but it pays out so much, especially in other games. I personally come from another game. I played World of Warcraft before, and it is basically impossible to do the keyboard moving part. Like, everyone will laugh at you if you do it. Okay, it can be done, but once you reach a certain level, for example, someone's shooting you and you need to use your hazard emitters, or someone decloaked tractor beamed you and wants to shoot you with his overload, you just need to immediately react. You need to get that polarized hold going to make you immune to the tractor beam, otherwise you're dead. Okay, so you don't have reaction time. You can't just have your mouse up here and then just click it and click there and go back here and be pressured at the same time. That's why I personally suggest everyone should play with keybinds. You don't need to, and there's several ways of helping you make it easier. Thanks everyone for joining in. Okay, so that's the general thing I want to talk about. Why are keybinds good? You can react faster, and it doesn't take away so much of your attention to the actual goal you have. Okay. My keybinds I have under the stream that is linked as a pastebin file. You can use those. I personally suggest to everyone make your own. Like, don't copy mine because mine are what I'm used to. I always have the attack pattern alpha on number pad 1, which is on my mouse, or distribute shields on X. And that way I can just press it when I really need it. Okay. Second thing, there are different sorts of cooldowns. People will usually know that an ability has a cooldown. Like, if you use Cannon Scatter Volley, that has a cooldown. You can't use it over and over. Okay, so we just use it. It says 30 seconds. That's the cooldown of the ability. Now there's also an internal cooldown which reduces or which is the minimum activation time in between for the same, or in this game also a similar ability. Like I run 2 copies of Cannon Scatter Volley, even though they are of different rank, they share their global, not but the internal cooldown. The minimum activation time for this ability is 15 seconds. There is no way to get under 15 seconds. If you use Oxybet to reduce your cooldowns, you will still get the 15-second cooldown. Therefore, there's no reason to run any ability 3 times usually. All of them have a internal cooldown usually of half their real cooldown. Okay. At the same point, they also have a global cooldown. Now, people for some reason try to confuse that in this game. They say if I use Cannon Scatter Volley, it has a global cooldown of 15 seconds because you cannot use another Cannon Scatter Volley for 15 seconds. However, that doesn't really make sense. The global cooldown is something that is referred to as the time it takes to activate the skill, which could also be the cast time, but in that time frame you are not allowed to use another ability. That is really where many of the usual keybind macros break down, okay? Let's say you want to use emergency portal weapons, attack pattern omega, and scatter volley at the same time. Okay, I just press 1, 2, and 3 at the same time over and over, and you see it doesn't work. This is at 7 seconds, this is at 1 less, and this is even at 1 less. Okay, that is because if I use my scatter volley, it takes 1 second to do that. Then it used the emergency portal weapons, which is another second. The attack pattern omega got used last and also took 1 second to activate. Okay, so everything you use gets you a global cooldown of about a second. I mean, some abilities don't really follow that rule, but generally speaking, that is the case for almost all of them. Some usables don't go in that direction, and the fire will, for some reason, activates at the end of that. Okay, so this is the minimum activation time that has to pass before you can use another ability. Let's suppose you have the macro that combines all of your abilities into one key, distributes shields and fires off all weapons. Okay, that is usually referred to as the Hilbert macro, because he posted that on the Hilbert guide site. The problem with that is, if you say you want to fire all weapons, it has to go through each of them with a reduced global cooldown. I think it's like 0.2 or something. And it activates one weapon after another. The problem is I need to close the window because it's getting kind of cold. Secondly, the real problem is if you now press the key bind again, it will do something else. For example, as it is on a very short cooldown, you see it takes for like 3 seconds. If you then distribute shields, it will actually hinder your weapons that have not yet fired from shooting. Okay, and then it will randomly possibly use the emergency portal weapons and then will shoot the other weapons, and then it basically doesn't follow the order you want it to. It just randomizes the outcome, and it screws you over on your firing cycle, which you then try to take care of by just hitting it more often. What that really does is it kills your DPS. It kills your DPS, like there's no way around that, okay? When I started to get into the game, I did the same thing. I used this macro because I thought, dude, this is awesome. Like, why should firing weapons, distributing shields, and using abilities interact? But you need to realize that everything in this game basically is on a global cooldown and prevents other abilities from being used. Okay? Let's see on this beautiful page what we need to take care of. Okay, So what you can do if you try to get into this is basically use your distribute shields as a single keybind, use your fire all weapons as a single keybind, and use your major abilities you want to use in a certain order all the time, bind those together. That way you can shoot your weapons, use your cooldowns in between the firing cycles, and distribute shields when necessary. Just make sure that you never cancel your firing cycle. Like the weapons will activate, shoot, it will have an animation like this, where this vertical bar just moves down like this, okay, you can see that. And then it will refresh, and during that firing cycle, when they have shot already and while it's refreshing, you can use abilities. But just make sure not to interrupt when they refresh their cycle. Okay. The best thing and what you should always aim for at the end is have every ability bound to its own key. Just because otherwise you run into trouble for abilities not shooting off in the correct order, or misusing something in a spot where you didn't want to, okay? There's just or let's say you have your polarized hull on cooldown are being tracked and want to use your attack pattern Omega, but it only activates after your cannon scatter volley. So you have to actually wait 2 globals to get your Omega going, and it might be dead. Now this is a real problem when you already have it nailed down pretty good, okay? You can definitely start out with such a build form where you bind several things together. For PvE, that should work. If you switch ships, start out that way. Okay. Okay, so that's how you should basically fly your ship. Then there's another thing which, for some reason, usually gets confused. We have those power levels of your ship. You want your weapons quite high. Okay, so usually you want to have 125 over 100 if you use beams. That's due to something that's called over-capping, which no one really knows how it works, but as far as I know, it still does. So yeah, you should go that direction. Your shield power. Okay, so the weapon power actually increases its damage. When you shoot weapons, you lose weapons power, and therefore you lose on some of your damage. So if you could, out of a miracle, reduce the drain of your weapons, you would actually gain damage. Okay, that we will need later to explain certain things. The more shield power you have, the more resistant your shields get. Like your damage reduction will increase, and the shields will refill faster. If you have more engine power, your ship will fly faster, obviously. You will get a little more defense, though only to certain limits, and your ship will also turn faster. Auxiliary power doesn't do that much when you start out. It increases most of these science abilities, but it gets improved later by an ability out of your reputation system that you really should go for. That is why you have usually to have high aux power as well. Okay. So while we are at these power levels, let's look at our core of the ship, the warp core or the singularity. They all work the same. Now you should always get a core with AMP, okay? That increases all the damage for each subsystem with 75 or more power. So that is why we have to look at our power levels and try to make each of them at least 75 or more. I run 61, 56, 80, and 120 right now. They will in combat be increased to a level where I have actually all 4 of them above 75. Everything after 125 weapons should go to auxiliary. or the average build. There are certain orcs to bat builds that do this differently, but that is just the general rule of thumb. Okay. Then to start out, we have these weapons down here. When you right-click them, they will go to autofire. That is indicated by the green circle, and above on the tooltip it actually also says auto-firing. That is why you only have to use your shoot all weapons once, and when you switch targets you have to redo it unless you change the settings. But you should really use this, like right-click them to make them auto-fire, okay? You usually have to do this once per ship for some reason. If you mouse over this weapon, it will tell you most of the things you need to know. For example, it says 1.6k DPS. Now this is not the actual DPS of the weapon. It does not include crit chance, crit damage, or most of the abilities, even though I could use them now, and you will actually see that the damage gets increased to 1.9k with Scatter Volley. But this is basically a good readout for how much something influences your damage, okay? For example, there are certain set bonuses or consoles that influence your damage, and to really know whether something is better than another possibility, you need to look at these tooltips. Let's just make sure we get something out of the way. If you use, I have the tag guy to be a Romulan operative, therefore he increases our crit chance and our crit damage. Okay, we are at 1623 DPS. If we remove him, we are still at 1623 DPS. So this is the best proof of that crit H and crit D doesn't influence it in any way that you probably can find. I mean, this just makes sure. I don't even know which one was there. This guy. Okay. Okay, so trust these tools, but do not trust them on crit H and crit D. So why do we even need to damage something? Like, something has to die at the end of the usual mission, but it does that already, you might say. I mean, it's kind of fair to say that if you do 3k DPS, you will get through the STS and you will get the optional. However, if you would deal more damage, it would die faster. And that is something now when it comes to people talking about playstyle. If you are comfortable with where you're at, if you do not do team content, I'm okay with that, okay? I'm not trying to say you are not allowed to do something that you like. You have to enjoy what you're doing, or otherwise you're gonna quit at some point. And that's really not the goal here. You should keep playing, okay? We, as the people out of the DPS channels, just enjoy trying to push it to the limits in PvE and just to kill everything as fast as we can. Therefore, we have investigated all the ways to do this more efficiently. And one of the biggest tools at our disposal is called the Comment Log Reader. You will find it on our forum post about the DPS channels. You can also just Google it. It's called the Comment Log Reader, as you can see up here. You have to in-game write /commentlog1 into your game. That will create a file located at your Star Trek Online Live Logs game client folder that you have to load in here, and then you get a readout for the DPS that was done. We don't get the damage meter right away, but we only get the comment log, but we have this beautiful comment log reader which almost does everything we need to do to actually get those numbers. Okay, this is now the real test. Like, If you look at this number, this is okay. It might be better to use this and that. If you really want to know, does it do that or not, go into the STF, do it and see how it does. You can find basically all the information on here that you really need. And this will become increasingly more important if you look at the upcoming advanced content. We will have to deal around 15k DPS to meet the easier advanced Q optionals. And if you die, you have to do a little more, and you don't want to be the guy that everyone has to carry through. So this is basically where I want to get started and where I want to help you with. What I want to help you with. Okay, so that is basically all for why you should use the command log reader, why you should do DPS. If you do more DPS, you die. The enemies die faster. Sometimes you even die faster if you build a real glass cannon that just obliterates the STF. You have to understand that it's always a trade-off between survivability and damage. Okay, you don't get all of the good stuff usually at the same time. There are some hybrid builds, but they will usually not do the most possible damage, but that can be okay. 15k now is about what 10% of the community does, but you have to understand that it's not difficult. 15k can be done in any type of ship with any type of loadout, and there's really if you look into the mechanics and get your gameplay working, you can do 10k with a level 10 ship. I tried that and it worked. Okay, so if you're flying a level 50 ship, I need to say that probably, you can always do 15k DPS. Okay, so what I want to talk to you about next is just having a look at the abilities at our disposal. Like, this is our toolbox that the developer just gave us. Now, we shouldn't really judge whether something is good, because most things are good in some spots, but generally speaking, I'm trying to limit this a little to what is really useful in PvE as well. So if you look up here, the hazard emitters, okay, this is a healing ability that will also increase your damage resistance for a short duration of time, 15 seconds I think. It will also cleanse your ships of hazards. Now, if you're playing the STF, the Borg will shoot you with those plasma torpedoes and your ship will burn for another couple of seconds. You can put out that fire with the hazard emitters. So this one is quite a useful survivability ability. Jam sensors that you usually don't see in PvE. It makes the enemy not see you anymore, but when you deal damage to him, he will eventually see you again. Mask enemy energy signature, you will usually also not see. Gives you basically a small stealth effect, so they have to be closer to you to actually shoot you. Polarized hull. Now this one makes you immune to tractor beams and to the damaging part of tractor beam repulsors, for example. Can be useful because Borg every now and then decide to tractor you. It's okay. The science team gives you an instant heal of your shields, and it also clears you of science debuffs. You could use that for a shield healing component. It really only plays a big role with the clearing in PvP, or the Borg Queen every now and then decides to anti-matter spread you. That also can get cleared with the science team. Tachyon beam, you will usually not see anyone using this. It drains the enemy's shields very slowly. Tractor beam keeps your enemy in place as more of a PvP ability as well. Transfer shield strength is a healing over time ability that affects your shields and gives them a damage reduction. Like you take 8% less shield damage if you use this tier of ability. Those are the science abilities. Now we have some different ones later, and we have higher tiers of the already presented. The higher tier ones usually just heal more, give more resistances, but the general mechanic stays the same. For the tech abilities, we have the Beam, Fire at Will. Now what this does is not so much understood by the broad variety of community, okay? We have this beautiful page called STO Gamepedia, where you have the ability Beam, Fire at Will. And it really nicely explains as to what it does. You use the Anson rank of this ability. For 10 seconds, it upgrades your beam attacks by 25% DPS. Instead of 5 attacks, you do now 4. Instead of 4, you do now 5. Get this the right way. And also, you will attack a random secondary target for 5 attacks. That, however, means that your main target will always get 5 of those hits. So, to your main target, it's a 25% damage increase, and it randomly deals damage to another target. If you rank up this ability to Lieutenant or Lieutenant Commander, the damage increase will be more. Okay, so the highest tier has 40%. It will still deal 5 attacks to your main target and 5 attacks to a random nearby target. Now people will say, oh, if you use this ability, it's all number pushing and you're padding the meters and it's all cheap and it's all cheat. Okay? Truth is, on Cure Space, you might argue that. On other missions, like imagine the infected space, okay? You have this one big thing in the middle that doesn't take damage because it's being healed right back up. Now, I understand that this one doesn't take damage, but there are also 4 of the small things around it. There are 2 spheres nearby. Therefore, you hit 6 out of 7 targets are good, basically, and you don't lose any damage. You also make sure that at least 50% of your fired will damage is already on the right target by just targeting the right unit. Now the other 50%, you lose 1 out of 7 targets. If that is too much pushing the meters, okay, so be it. But the general influence is that it really, really, really improves your DPS. Like, this ability is very good. This is the Cannon Scalar Volley, for example, which is also claimed to be a petting the meter ability. Also, while the ability is not up when you just used it and the buff fell off, okay, you will get only irregular shots to your main target. Therefore, out of, like, let's say you deal 20k, you will have dealt 15k at the very least to your main target. Okay. The beam overload does not anymore drain any of your power, of your weapons power, and it also will deal a critical strike. It will always do that. So this one has applications to PvP, not so much in PvE, especially if you run arrays only. A dual beamman can produce massive spike with this. Beam target something. This is usually a PvP ability if you use the tactical team. Now this one is an ability that people also did not yet fully understand. It gives you a buff for 10 seconds with an internal cooldown of 15 seconds that removes certain debuffs, like when your ship has been assimilated or something. But the real reason why you use this ability is it distributes your shields automatically to the facing where you take damage. Okay? That means if you distribute shields, it has a certain speed of how fast it can distribute your power. If you use this ability, it will go way faster and it will only always go to the direction that you take damage. It does not equalize all your shields. Therefore, when you are being attacked, this is the key to press. Torpedo High Yield upgrades your next torpedo attack to usually proc your secondary effect. If you have the gravimetric rift torpedo or something, that usually procs out of that. It deals increased damage. It's pretty good for torpedo builds. We will talk about that a little later though. The torpedo spread. Now that is an ability that makes your next torpedo attack to attack up to 3 targets. And that is a number you come across all the time in this game. It attacks 3 targets for even more damage than it would. So even against 1 target, it already deals more damage than it would regularly. Therefore, it is always good to use AoE abilities, and the damage increase of the high yield torpedo is very small over the torpedo spread. Okay, I need to take a short break, and I'll be back in just a sec.